There's really one thing that I think about when I am at work, and that's being in front of my computer and creating music. And so I just take that time to get set up and get right into it. I started to feel like, after watching all of the devastation and all of what's happening in California, with all of the land being burned and the homes being burned in the Palisades and surrounding area, I felt inspired to make some music. Now, what I wanted to create was something that kind of, is reflective of myself as an artist. My name is Ambient. So I wanted something really ambient, really, really ambient. And I think I found that. I found that in the tool or the plugin that I was using. That tool being Massive X. It's a synth pad. And here at this point, I was like, okay, I need to be able to quantize this in such a way, because I started to think, okay, wouldn't it be great to add like some beats to this? Like, wouldn't it be awesome to create some sort of a kick, a quarter note kick in this entire, like to make it something that kind of then turns into something that's like dub techno or so. And with the plugin I was using, and with the notes and arranging everything on the MIDI, I was just really trying to see if I could, quantize everything and how would that sound. And I was really encountering so many problems and issues with it. It didn't really, I couldn't hear the rhythm in my head. And I realized, okay, later on, I realized that I should have just used what I had initially created on the fly, just in the motion. So I'm trying to recreate different sounds or different kind of note sequences to see if that could turn into anything, if like in my heart and mind it could become a song or a track. And I was really, really feeling at this. And then as you can clearly see, it's none of the notes were quantized to the grid. Like it just wasn't quantized. It's like this plugin itself, the sound was and is created in such a way in Massive X that, you get this revolving kind of, right? And it's all in the plugin itself. It's all in the preset. And not really wanting this video to be too long, I didn't really want to do too much tinkering with the sound. I just need to flow with what I was hearing, and I didn't want to take that time to be able to kind of do a bit of design on the sound. I like how it sounds. I like how it evolves. And again, all I could think about was just the utter devastation and the sorrow and the grief that the folks in California are experiencing. They've lost their memories, they've lost their possessions. I mean, they say it's by human error, and some are saying it's climate change. It looks like it's pretty suspicious to me. And so I thought this sound kind of has this like pain beneath it all. I did at one point switch on the plugin just to see what I could do to, I guess, do a little bit of sound design. But I like the revolving nature of the sound. That's the way it sounds like to me. Here I'm just trying to see if I could like somehow closely quantize it so I could be able to put some kind of beat to it. And so what I tend to do is listen to the same section over and over again until something comes to my heart and mind that I can add more sounds as they come into my mind and my heart. And here I am changing the attack and seeing what I like, what I don't like. A little bit of tinkering here and there, taking a bit of time to do that. But not the whole of this video though. There's a lot more that I end up adding to this entire track. And really, I'm just tinkering just to see what I like. You know, that's what it's all about. For me, the inspiration starts in my heart and my mind, and it flows out from there. There's also a really important time frame that I have where inspiration leaves me, inspiration comes, and then it goes. So I don't want to spend too much time on things that I can't really change, or if something doesn't sound good, or if an instrument doesn't sound good, or if a sample doesn't sound good, and I'll just get rid of it. And you'll see that evidenced here. And eventually I go back to the original sound. Tinker with the placement of where the MIDI notes are. This part is really, really tedious. It was very tedious. Always the beginning is tedious. I always have an idea as to what my sound, what I want something to sound like. In the middle of my track. And it's the building out of the track, starting from the beginning, which I find to be the hardest thing to do. I actually find writing that way. If I was to write a story or to write a script on something, I don't know, I like anime, and I like a lot of the classic movies. Whenever I would create stories, I would always have these scenes in my mind first in the middle of the story, rather than say like in the beginning. And also I would have the end in mind as well too. So now what I want to do is start to work on my bass, and to choose a bass that would go really well, kind of provide the backbone, spine of the music, I call it. And I was really impressed with Massive X. I was really impressed with the pad sound, and wanted something that was equally like electrical, bass electric. I didn't think that a stretless bass would have worked in this piece. I needed something that was definitely electronic. I like Massive X by Native Instruments. And so what I do, if you haven't noticed already, is as a tone or something comes to my mind, or a rhythm or a beat comes to my mind, I try to find something close to what I like. It sounds like what I think it would sound like, that, like from the sounds I have. I try to select the sound that is most likely to what I'm like hearing in my head and in my heart. And I need to be able to carve out that sound. So I will EQ it as I go along. I will EQ, I will slap compression on it. I'll slap other audio effects on that sound, on the return track as I go along. Because it really saves in time, it saves in the creative process. It's important to fill out the frequency spectrum. It's important to make sure that there isn't any kind of competition for for these sounds in the same space, in the same frequency, because then they will cancel each other out. Like, you won't be able to hear your sounds properly. And there are different ways of being able to use different audio tools to be able to prevent that from happening. After walking away from this track, I come back to it the following day, being today, and I actually put the bass MIDI notes up an octave so you could actually hear it. At this point, I'm hearing something in my head. I'm hearing like a rhythm, a beat of some sort, and I don't know what kind of drum kit I could possibly use or what samples I could use. Because like this kind of like sound, this revolving kind of sound that I'm hearing from the pad is not easily quantizable, if that's a word. So I am thinking, okay, what in my head, what do I know that I have already available that I've invested in? Contact Player 8 is what I open, and I'm looking for some sort of percussion, something that's percussive. And this is where, I go through a whole now sequence of trying to find the right percussive sound. And this was not fun at all. Like, this process is hard, and this is what I go through. I don't really choose my presets in advance. I don't really know how to do that. I don't know how people can choose their presets without going through the stress and pressure of determining like what sounds good with the very sounds that you're creating. I have to make them as I go along. Inspiration is hard, and hearing, knowing what you hear, knowing what you want to hear, what would sound good together, and designing that is really difficult. It's hard. And as you can see here, I'm tapping away at certain keys that have certain sounds. And you can barely hear it. I can't even hear it. And I'm having massive problems. Still can't hear it, so I delete it. I move on to the next. Just make sure I do a check of all of my notes. Try to see if I could try to quantize everything again. Looking back at this now, it's just like all of these things that I've already done and exhausted, these avenues. I go back and forth and try different things. And it's really not the best way to go about producing. If something doesn't work, it doesn't work. And eventually I end up ditching this entire idea and I move forward because it just doesn't make any sense to go over ground that you've already covered and discovered that it wasn't going to work in any particular way. And I'm still not getting what I want. The pad isn't exactly quantized. The sound needs to be further designed, and I just didn't want to take the time to do that. Eventually, I just hit like Control Z, like undo. Yeah, put everything back to normal and just work with what I've created and just trust myself and move forward. I mean, it still has a really interesting sound. And so now I'm going to try to create some sort of a beat. I'm not sure I could ever make this track a dub techno kind of sound anyway. Not without doing more work to it. And I just really wanted to make something really unique to what I was feeling about what's happening in California right now. But still having massive problems with whatever instrument tool I'm using. As you can clearly see, the drums that I was using was not working until eventually I found something that did work. And I go right back to the pad thinking I could change it somehow, alter it. And I guess some minor alterations were done, but I just thought I could control the way that it sounded to make it easier for me to lay some percussion on the track. And all of this, as you can clearly see on my face, is like interfering with the overall process and my progress. I also just wanted to move forward, and because I was hearing other sounds in my head too, like there's other great evolving ambient sounds that Ableton has, that Contact 8 has, you know, and I just wanted to be able to just press forward and at least build out and arrange and lay some groundwork and some foundation. Like right now the pad is going, right now you're hearing, kind of hearing the bass, not really. I could really, at this point I've really carved out that sound even better. I'm just going through Contact and seeing the various loops. Not really interested in too much. Do you hear how that sounds though? It sounds really creepy, eh? Yeah, I'm just going through all of so I've used Easter Island before, Albion 1, and I thought it was really, really good for the orchestral pieces that I've made in the past. You can check out my channel to hear some of those tracks. Just am having problems just like being able to hear anything. So I know I have to turn down the volume in the other pad and bass. Yeah, this percussion section was really, really difficult. And I'm tapping and I'm trying to, and as you can clearly see, the keyboard section of the Contact player, like I am hitting and you're just not hearing anything. Like it was really quiet. It's so annoying dealing with certain sounds that just you don't hear right away. But I suppose it means that, you know, if I really want to use it, I could double up on the track to hear the percussion, or I could try to EQ it as I'm doing now to the best of my ability. And I'm actually doing this in the return track A for thinking that I'm actually embarrassing. I'm actually EQing the wrong track because as you can clearly see in my MIDI track 1 and 2, it's like it's out of order. I like to go from A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, for example, like in that order, that kind of order, and it's not. I don't realize it until after. But this is all a part of it. It had been a while since I'd done any music production, and so, oh my goodness, this process was really difficult. I can see why people have their go-to sounds, why they already have their preset sounds that they've listened to, sounds that I guess they've chosen and selected that are unique and special. But I mean, I'm in the process right now as I'm getting back into music production and creating, and definitely I know at this point that I need to take time to listen to the sounds that I have and create a template. This is not a template by any means. This is a template with my presets. This is a template that I am exploring different presets with and trying to create a song on the fly. And honestly, I would have, now I get it, see? Now I'm realizing that I'm in EQing the wrong tracks. And I don't like to sync out my sounds too much. To listen to them, I like to see how they sound in the mix. So I just want to make sure that noises, that sound is really compressed. And it is sounding kind of low. Everything sounds a bit low. So I really haven't found my percussion yet. I'm just EQing as I go along. Like even as I hear this back now, I'm hearing like vocals. Like I'm hearing how I could turn certain sections of this track into a melody, to create verses, to even create a chorus. It's so weird, the sound. So EQing tracks 1 and 2 to A and B, to the A-B return, is just setting me up to be able to now put some percussion. I'm just trying to figure out where on the frequency spectrum this is percussion live, because I like Easter Island. And I didn't want to throw in at the time anyway, a standard kick from a drum kit. At the time anyway. And I'm thinking maybe I'm having some phase issues. But I'm going to try to EQ this to the best of my ability anyway. Sometimes you just have to, have patience with the process. Sometimes you just have to go through these moments of like discovery and failure. And like deal with yourself, what you're hearing in your head. And have patience with that process of finding what you're hearing in your head and in your heart. Because there is an element of that. I mean, Yeah, sound is great because of the science behind it and the mathematics behind it, but it's also just great because it simply sounds great to what you're trying to create. I try to see if I can turn up the gain on the phase invert tool, but yeah, it started to create other sounds in my ear that was annoying. I still can't hear it. I still cannot hear like the sound. And I'm tapping that keyboard trying to hear, and I can't. And I'm thinking, this is the wrong instrument to use. I really need to use something that's electric, I think. Still having problems. I mean, tracks 1 and 2, or sorry, 2 and 3 are fairly loud. Let's see. And you hear that? And I gotta get rid of that. Yeah, so I'm trying to find something else that I could use. And I'm thinking, okay, maybe I should use BBC orchestra. Not really getting the fact that, I'm using synth instruments. I need to use synth percussion as well. And so I learned quite quickly that I should really be consistent with the selection of instruments that I am using unless I intend to slap a whole bunch of effects and double up the tracks. If I'm using something that's like an acoustic sample or something that is orchestral, live instrument sample, it has its own, to me, wind, like it has its own energy. And so I'm using the hits, seeing if maybe if I think that's the reverb, not sure. It's still really low. And I'm like, okay, maybe I should just send it directly to the master. And then when I'm sending it to the return track, I'm barely hearing it. And this was hard. This was not easy. This was not going to be easy to create. See, it's like clear in the master. But I really wanted everything to go through the return tracks and then into the master. Because I like being able to add my effects on my return track. Like I find that I get the right sound when I use return tracks. Like I think it's good to be able to have it go through some processing on the return track before it hits the master. That's just my point of view. And I don't want too much going into the master anyway, because I want all of my sounds to be heard, and I'm having the hardest time being able to find percussion. It was really, really difficult. And I'm really toiling with this thing, and it's really annoying me. Still not really hearing it. And just like, what am I going to use now? Like, what on earth am I going to use? Yep, and I just toss it. And try to see if I can find something else. So it occurred to me that I could create rhythm by using arpeggiated sounds. And you can see there that some sort of rhythm is created by the arp. And already the track is at about 41 bars. And I extended to about 51 bars. And I'm still on the lookout for some sort of drum kit. Bearing in mind that beats per minute or beats per second is like 130 and a half. Or at least the tempo anyway. Yeah, this is where I start to pencil in some sort of kick beat. And see what it sounds like. I don't end up actually going with this option, but I mean, I try to copy and paste it. No, it's not quite sounding right. And I'm using my push 3. You could barely hear it, actually. So I'm going to use the EQ, and I'm going to EQ out the sound. And we'll go so far as to even duplicate this track so that we hear that kick. You can kind of hear it, but not really. I'm putting a phase invert tool just to make sure that you can really capture that low end, giving it a try, just tinkering to see what can be done to really make that sound much more distinct and not muddied. See if I can do some sort of subtractive EQ. My right hand has my mouse pad. That's why you can't really see my right hand, but that's where I'm really doing most of this work. Yeah, now you can hear the drums, somewhat hear the drums. Could definitely still lower all the other sounds. And this is where I'm putting the EQ onto the master. Now, I want to make sure that I can get as much sound and open up the frequency spectrum as much as possible. Just not really extensively. I'm not really trying to master at this point, but just to open up all the sounds being fed into the master. So I hear everything. But I'm really still in creative mode. I'm still actually building up this track. I'm not really ready to by any means. Really totally mix and master it and automate it as well. I'm still actually developing this track and even arranging it here and there. I do notice that at about bar 51, I can't hear the pad. I can't hear a few other sounds. So I'm just making sure that the MIDI notes are on the grid properly, not too far ahead of each, what I call it, measure or each section, but just making sure that every MIDI note really hits the grid properly, and is not going to cause there to be no sound coming through for each MIDI note. I want to create a track that's evolving, that's moving somewhere, that will surely take you somewhere. After a while, the sound can become pretty hypnotic if there aren't any breaks, if there aren't any sections, if there isn't any kind of release, whether it be like, maybe a section where there isn't, kick, or a section where there isn't the pad, but there's something else, other sound. Like, music can really put you into a state of like hypnosis if there isn't some sort of release, or if the music doesn't flow and take you somewhere new and different. And I want to be able to incorporate both. I want to actually take my listeners into a next level or next state without it being too jarring. My tracks are ambient, and I want to just be able to take my listeners, into a calm state or a reflective state. And in this case, with what's going on in California, this is, I think, definitely reflective of that tension and turmoil and grief and sorrow and chaos and destruction. But also there is like life, the preservation of life, those people's lives had been saved. More lives have been saved so far than have died, and we still mourn those who are dead, and really mourn for the whole land. At this point, I'm just kind of exploring what other instruments and sounds I could use. And I'm doing that using the drum kit. And I'm hearing elements of where a cymbal, and I'm hearing other sounds as well, and not really feeling it. And so I go Control Z, undo, and put everything back to normal. So I feel that I can, like I'm hearing like a choir's voice. And I want it to be kind of haunting, almost like maybe ethereal. And I'm going through the preset sounds from Ableton. how I tend to come up with different sounds is if I play the same section over and over again. I'm trying to see if I can still get the kick sound to be as solid and punchy, or at least carved out and heard properly amidst of all of the padded sounds that you're hearing. So I'm just going to copy and paste basically the same kind of melodic line, if you want to even call that. And I want to be able to hear this choir, so I will have to change where they are in the scale, probably shift them up an octave. You can hardly hear them. They're pretty soft. And right now, the kick beat is sounding a bit too much, and I'm having some problems setting up the panning of the sound. So I'm just trying to fix that as I go along. Yeah, in future tries or in future productions, I'm going to just not spend so much time kind of going back and forth with my EQing. As I watch this now, I can see that I spend too much time kind of going back and forth between certain tasks that I should just do like once and then move on. But I tell you, it can be important if you really want to be able to isolate a particular sound, especially if you've just introduced that new sound into your track. So there is, I guess, a place for it, but I just don't want to spend so much time on it. Again, I am just coming back into music production after having not really done it consistently for a while. There's so much stuff that's been happening over the past few years, and music production is really a great way for me to give glory back to God. Yeah, and I just shake my head here because I'm not really that satisfied with what I'm hearing, so I'm still trying to EQ the choir. And I guess it would be helpful to open up the rest of the channels. But in this case, it might not be necessary. There really isn't very much frequency coming through the 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th channels. seems like what I'm trying to do is to create a bit of grain delay on my choir sound. Just really make it stand out a bit more. So I'm tinkering with the plugin to just see what I like. Because I do want to give it a bit of an echoey kind of sound and very unique sound on this canvas. And it could be that the pad is competing with the choir sound. Probably the case. You can kind of hear now how it's coming together. I love audio effects. I love audio effects because it really creates dynamic in the ear. It's freaky. And it makes you pause to really consider why you like what you're here. So at this point, yeah, I'm just kind of wondering what else could I add? And I think I would like to be able to put in some sort of a piano, but the more I was listening to some of these sounds and the more that I was trying to look for what I was hearing in my head and in my heart, I realized I really need something that was going to be electronic. And I just probably need to arrange this track in such a way that I could have a really nice piano solo or more representation from the piano. Like, I don't like using the word representation, but to hear more of the piano would probably require me to not use the pad in the bass at certain times, or maybe just not the pad at all, because the pad is really loud. And what I was hearing was much more of like a muted piano sound, which is exactly what I wanted to. Actually, a detuned piano, kind of like the kind of piano you might come across in a burnt building or a burnt home. Something that would kind of give a sound, even if the sound sounds a bit broken. So I'm most likely going to use something like that, and that would be for the next video as I progress through this track that I want to get through. And I might not have a detuned piano currently installed on my Contact 8. I would have to check my other sounds that I have yet to download into Contact 8. That's on my Native Instruments account. But I know I would have something like that somewhere in all of my music and all of the samples and all of the instruments that I have, between Ableton and native instruments. I know I have a detuned piano sound somewhere. Anyway, so that's it for now. I was really tired by this time I had worked during the day, and then putting this whole production together, putting this music production together. This is still a work in progress right now. It's sounding very hypnotic. I don't want it to be hypnotic. I want to have other sections to this track take the listener on a journey. And yeah, at this point, I'm just saving everything and making sure I can go back. I've also recorded myself making this music production, so I have to edit this down. And yeah, that's kind of what I'm doing. So that's it, everyone. Follow me for the next video, or subscribe if you'd like to. But, if not, thanks for listening. And yes, definitely watch the next video when I put everything together. And I want to complete this track, and I want to be able to kind of pay tribute to kind of what's going on the West Coast, and pray for those in the affected areas to be provided for with shelter, and and keep creating through this, as it definitely helps me to cope, and I hope pays respect to the victims out there. Anyway, y'all, I will see you in the next one, and thanks for watching. Bye.